Factoring Polynomials with a Visual Guide. This is already part 5 of a series of videos to help students understand factoring polynomials completely. In this part of the tutorial series, we will be discussing factoring a special trinomial called the Perfect Square Trinomial. But before we continue, these are important concepts you might want to recall. If you need to review these topics, I suggest balikan nyo talagang i-recall yung mga yon, or you are confident enough to skip to other parts of this video, click the links in the description below. But don't worry, we will try to explain some previous topics naman as we go along. Like previous parts in this series, let's review our visual guide, serving as our map in factoring polynomials. When factoring polynomials completely, the very first step is to get the GCMF. That's part 1 of this tutorial series. After that, we proceed to step 2, where we will use other techniques of factoring, depending on what is left after kinuha mo yung GCMF. Pwedeng trinomial, pwedeng binomial, or pwede ring a polynomial with 4 or more terms. So far, we started discussing trinomials with leading coefficient equal to 1. That is part 2 of this tutorial series. Also, nag-segue tayo to factor quadratic-like trinomials here, which was discussed in part 3. And from the previous 2 videos, we started learning factoring trinomials of the general form, yung case na ang leading coefficient is not equal to 1. Dalawang method ang ginamit natin dito so far. Una, ang organized listing method, mas mahabang way, and that is part 4a. Pangalawang method, the AC method, mas mabilis na method, that is part 4b. All of these in the links in the description below. In this part 5, we are discussing the last type of factoring trinomials. Sa wakas, matatapos na tayo sa factoring trinomials, a special case called the Perfect Square Trinomial. It is important to recall a previous topic called special products, particularly the square of a binomial. Let's say we're given this binomial, x plus y, that group quantity squared. So what does that mean? It means the base, which is x plus y, should be multiplied by itself. Now, doing that, we should distribute x, and then distribute y, and then add all of those to get the final expanded form. But another way of doing it is by using a method called FOIL method. First, outer, inner, last. First terms, we have x times x is x squared. Next, outer terms, x times y, we have xy. Next, I stands for inner. We have positive y times x is yx, or the same thing as xy. And finally, the product of the last terms, L. Y times y is equal to y squared. But we have to simplify terms which are like. So, looking at x squared, wala siyang like term, we simply copy x squared. But xy and xy here, take note, their numerical coefficient are both equal to 1. Therefore, 1xy plus 1xy is equal to 2xy. And finally, y squared, walang like term, we simply copy y squared. So this trinomial is the expanded form of our binomial x plus y quantity squared. Now this time, let's consider this binomial x minus y quantity squared. Similarly, we copy the base x minus y times the same base x minus y. Again, by FOIL, we have first terms x times x is x squared, and then outer, we have x times negative y is negative xy. Next, inner, we have negative y times x, or negative xy. And finally, negative y times negative y is equal to positive y squared. Again, combining like terms, x squared, walang like, so we copy x squared, and then outer and inner can be combined, negative xy minus xy again. Take note, they have a numerical coefficient equal to 1. Negative 1xy minus xy is negative 2xy. And finally, y squared, simply copy. This trinomial is the expanded form of our binomial x minus y quantity squared. Now, of course, we know that we really don't need to go through all of this. From our previous video, we learned there are quick steps to get these trinomials without using this FOIL method. What we simply did was follow number 1. Simply square the first term. Looking at our example, the first term is x. So ang shortcut is, square mo lang yon, x squared. Done. Now, check natin sa second example. X was the first term. Square mo, x squared. Done. So that's the first step. Second step, double the product of the two terms. Meaning, the product of these two terms, x and y, double it. So try natin, x times y is xy. Double. So it's 2xy. Dapat lang kasi pareho ang ating outer and inner. So adding them is the same thing as doubling. Next, let's try this next example. X times negative y is negative xy. Double it, it's negative 2xy. Second step, checked. And the last step, para mas mabilis, is simply square the last term. So squaring y here, we have y squared. Squaring negative y, meaning negative y, times negative y is again positive y squared. Now you might ask, what is the reason why are we recalling all of this? Now since this is called the square of a binomial, therefore this expanded form here can be considered as a perfect square trinomial, which is our lesson for today. Let us call the three terms of the perfect square trinomial as a, b, and c. Now, knowing the characteristics of this type of trinomial and by looking at relationships between these three terms, pag alam natin ang relationship nila, mas matutunan natin yung pag-factor ng perfect square trinomial. Teka, paano ba natin malalaman na PST? Yan. Or perfect square trinomial nga ang isang trinomial. Gamitin natin yung 3 steps natin kanina. Ito. Here on the left as basis. Let us ask these questions. Kung ito, x squared, is the square of the first term here, edi dapat perfect square ito. So the first question that we should ask is the first term a perfect square? If the answer is yes, question 1 done. Pero marami pang kailangang i-check, hindi lang yon. Let's use this number 3 step as the next basis. Square the last term. Kapag na-square ito, we get this. Kapag na-square yan, we get this. Therefore, this third term c should be a perfect square. Kaya, what do we ask? Question number 2. Is the last term c a perfect square? If the answer is yes, we're not yet done. 3 steps on the left, kailangan. 3 questions on the right. Ano yung pangatlo? Yung middle term. Take note, yung middle term natin dito is double the product of x and negative y and x and y. So, that means itong middle term nito should be twice nung square root nung a at saka nung c. Okay? So, kapag nakuha natin yung tatlong sagot dyan is yes, yes, and yes, definitely our trinomial is a PST or a perfect square. Teka, hindi tayo pwedeng mag-factor kaagad without ever mastering kung ano yung mga perfect square na numbers na yan. So, ang gagawin natin, let's list down lahat ng perfect square na numbers na kaya natin. Kasi malaking tulong yan sa perfect square trinomials. Okay, subukan natin. 1 squared. 1 squared we know is 1. 2 squared. 2 squared is 4. So, 1 and 4 are perfect squares. Tuloy natin. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. So far, ito yung mga perfect square. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. Ituloy natin, bibilisan nating ilista lahat. Ayan, hindi na kasya. Sige, okay na muna yan. These are at least ilan sa mga common perfect squares. Anong ibig sabihin yan? Ibig sabihin yan yung kabaliktaran, square root of 1, ito yon, is equal to 1. That also means square root of 4 is equal to 2. Ang ibig sabihin nito, square root of 9 is equal to 3. And so on. Pero teka, hindi lang numbers ang kailangan nating kabisaduhin ang perfect square at saka square root. More importantly, bago sa atin, variables. So, can we list down mga common perfect square na variables or at least kung ano itsura nila? Subukan natin. Let's say we're given a variable x. I-square natin ito, it's equal to x squared. Let's say we're given y na variable. I-square natin yan. It's y squared. What if meron tayong x squared na variable, tapos i-square natin? Rules of exponents would tell us that we should multiply these exponents. 2 times 2 is 4. So x squared squared is x to the 4th. Another example, kunwari we're given x cubed, i-square natin. So this means rules of exponents, 3 times 2 is 6. Isa pa. Paano kapag may x to the 4th? I-square mo. Rules of exponents, x to the 8th. And so on. Now, kailangan meron muna tayong observation. These are what we call perfect square variables. By looking at the exponents, itong mga to, is there a way para madaling malaman kung perfect square variable siya? Easy. Notice all the exponents are even numbers. So lalagay natin dito, even exponents. Yun pala ang clue para malaman kung perfect square ang variable or not. So baliktarin natin katulad ng ginawa natin sa numbers. Anong ibig sabihin nito pag square root? That means the square root of x squared is equal to x. This means the square root of y squared is equal to y. This means the square root of x to the 4th is equal to x squared. That means the square root of x to the 6th is equal to x cubed. And finally, the square root of x to the 8th is equal to x to the 4th. Alam natin kung paano malaman kung even yung variable, kung perfect square ang variable, even exponents. Now, is there a faster way of knowing yung square root? Easy. Yung square root of x squared, anong exponent nito? 1. Yung square root of y squared, anong exponent nito? 1. Square root of x to the 4th, anong exponent nito? 2. Yung 2 naging 1, 4 naging 2, 6 naging 3, 8 naging 4. How can we easily get the square root of perfect square variables? We simply divide the exponents by 2. Yun ang importante. Okay, we're now ready to get the factors of a perfect square trinomial. So here are 3 examples. Now, the task is the given trinomial a PST? Let's answer that question. So check natin. Of course, we have this list para malaman kung PST or not. Now, if it is, factor it. Now, also from our previous slides, we have discovered that x squared plus 2xy plus y squared is just equal to the quantity x plus y squared. So actually, this is the way to factor a perfect square trinomial. Anong ibig sabihin yan? Okay, let's try number 1. Is the first term a perfect square? That's the first question. So to get that, ang tanong is, anong square root nito? What's the square root of x squared? It's x. Okay, it's a perfect square. Done, first question. Next, is the last term c a perfect square? Looking at 9, it's a perfect square. What's a square root? It's 3. Number 2 question, done. But you're not yet done answering the problem kasi may number 3 pa. Is the middle term b equal to twice the square root of a and multiplied by the square root of c. Meaning, ito ba equal sa double ng square root nito, which is x, and square root nito, which is 3? Check natin. What's 2 times x? 2x times 3, 6x. 6x. Therefore, this is also true. Finally, we know this is true, this is true, this is true. Tama lahat ng sagot doon. Therefore, it's a PST. But we're not yet done. If it is according to this direction, factor it. So, anong factor nito? Actually, halos tapos na. Use this, and we're done. Meaning, x, copy that, plus 3, and then squared. That is the factor, or that are the factors of this perfect square trinomial. Okay, how about our problem number 2? How do we check if its trinomial is a PST? We have again our list here. Square root of x squared. Let's solve for that. Anong square root ng x squared? It's x. Again, it's question number 1. Yes, it's true. First term A is a perfect square. Question number 2. Is this a perfect square? The square root of 25 is 5. Be careful. Actually, common mistake ito. Notice here that the sign of 25 is negative. Now, according to our question number 2, is the last term C a perfect square? 25 might be a perfect square, but negative 25, which should be a part talaga yung sign, isn't a perfect square. Walang perfect square na negative. Sorry, the answer is no. It's not a perfect square. Therefore, you cannot factor it. Yan na yun. Okay, last example here. First question, is the first term A a perfect square? Let's get the square root. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of k to the 6. Remember our recalling kanina, our discussion? So, copy the base k, and then what do you do with the exponent? Pag kumukuha ng square root, divide the exponent by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Sakto. Therefore, the square root of this one is 2k cubed. Question number 1, the answer is yes. Question number 2, is the last term C a perfect square? Natuto na tayo, positive dapat, correct, positive. But is 36 a perfect square? Yes, it is. The square root of that is 6. How about yung middle term? Check natin. I-double natin yung product nitong dalawang to. So let's multiply 2k cubed times 6. So 2 times 2k cubed is 4k cubed times 6. It's equal to 24k cubed. Therefore, is the middle term B 24k cubed twice square root ng A and square root ng C? The answer is yes. So, practically, we're done factoring. Bakit? Ito na yung gagamitin natin. These square roots. Meaning, let's write. We have 2k cubed plus 6. Copy lang yon, and then squared. These are the factors of our perfect square trinomial. Here are examples number 4, 5, and 6. Pero wala na tayong guide. So, subukan natin yung una. 16m squared, square root nito. Let's try. We know the square root of this is 4. M squared is m. Perfect square. First term done. How about the last term? May square root ba ito? Yes, let's try. What's the square root of 9? It's 3. Again, the last term is a perfect square. Problema na lang natin yung middle term. Yung pa naman ang pinaka-critical. So, always remember, double. Double of what? The product of this and that one. So, we have 4m times 3. Okay, let's check. Pareho ba dun? Doing that by multiplying 2 times 4m is 8m. 8m times 3 is 24m. Problem is, this is negative. Now, hindi pwede kasi positive ito. They're not equal. However, we should know that 9 aside from 3 positive na square root niya, pwede ring negative 3. So we can use the negative value here. Therefore, equal na sila. That's why mabilis na nating masasolve. Meaning, use this. Anong factors natin? So we simply copy 4m and then minus 3 because we use the negative square root. And then don't forget, squared. This now is the factor of, these are the factors of this trinomial. Of course, you can always check using FOIL method kung pareho doon. Okay, number 5. Let's try. Square root of x to the 9th. Ano ang square root niyan? Copy x. What is, siguro, x cube yan, di ba? Now, that is a common mistake. Sabi natin from our previous discussion kanina, dapat ang variable perfect square if it is even. Now, take note, this is not even. Therefore, is it a perfect square? No, it's not. So, it doesn't matter kung okay ang dalawang yan as long as ang isa sa mga question, no ang sagot, it's not a PST. Therefore, there are no factors of that using the PST method. Okay, last one. Ako, medyo malaki-laki. Let's try. What's the square root of 81? Isa-isa lang para hindi malito. It's 9. P to the 8, is that a perfect square? Yes, it is kasi even. So, P. And then divide the exponent by 2. P to the 4th. Perfect square. How about 100? Easy. Medyo malaki pero kaalam natin it's 10. Now, check natin the middle term. Double the product of what? These two. The square roots. So, 9p to the 4th times 10. Check nga natin kung equal doon sa ating middle term. We have 2 times 9 is 18. Times 10, 180. P to the 4th, they are equal. It's a PST. Therefore, we can use these two. Yan ang practical yung sagot. It's equal to 9p to the 4th plus 10. Don't forget, squared. Again, you can use FOIL to check your answers. We are now ready for some exercises. Here are 6 questions. Pause this video to try. Kaya nyo yan. Go! Here are the answers. Nakuha ba? Eto, last set of exercises. Medyo challenging yung last. You can figure it out, I'm sure. Pause this video now. Go! Here are the answers. I hope nakapractice tayo with our exercises. The last item is an introduction to a topic in higher math called completing the square. Nakuha nyo ba yon? But that's for another video. See you on the next one. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy solving!